welcome to the Creative Breakthrough. I am your host, Shireen Kassam, aka Creative Hustler, aka That Funny Brown Girl. Hey, thank you guys so much for joining me today. We have so many new listeners, and it has been amazing to watch the growth of this podcast over the last couple months. We've been featured in magazine articles, on other people's podcasts, and we recently had a feature on the Islam channel, which is amazing, and I'm going to talk about it because I know so many of you guys found this podcast through that, and I'm so grateful and so blessed for you guys to be here today. I wanted to take a minute and reintroduce myself since I know we have a lot of new listeners. So like I mentioned, I am the host of this podcast, but even more than being the host of this podcast, I am a stand-up comedian, and that is my number one passion in life and my purpose. I love performing comedy. I have been all over the world doing comedy, USA, Canada, Europe, the Middle East, Asia, South Africa, and it has been amazing. And it's opened up so many doors for me because thank you to stand-up comedy, I've also been able to start acting, which has been awesome. I now write TV pilots and stuff. I'm a speaker. I speak about passion and creativity, and I had the chance last year to go to Nairobi, Kenya, and speak about being creative. I'm also a host and MC now, and I got started on the radio because of comedy. And it's funny because I'm so blessed that I got to do all these things just because of stand-up comedy, because there's people who go to school for these things and have never been able to do the things that I've been able to do. So I'm so blessed and grateful that I've been able to be this multifaceted creative. I'm also an entrepreneur. I have 2 online businesses that I currently run in conjunction with this podcast and everything else I do. Oh, and I recently joined TikTok, which is huge because I never thought I would actually do it, but I did. So you should follow me at Funny Brown Girl. And if you really understand TikTok and know what you're doing on there, let me know because I need help, guys. I really do. So 2 reasons why I started this podcast. I want to share with you the reasons I started this podcast because I think it's really important to the mission of what I do. Because I think before you start anything in your creative journey, you need to have a mission. You need to have a purpose of why you're doing it. Because if you don't have a purpose, then you're going to let it fall to the wayside and you're not going to give it the attention and energy it needs. So this podcast started because when I started doing stand-up comedy and then I got into all these other creative endeavors, I never really had someone to turn to ask for advice. I didn't have someone mentoring me. I didn't have someone in my corner who was kind of showing me the ropes. And a lot of times creatives, we have to figure things out on our own, right? But there are people out there who are willing to share their knowledge. And so I started this podcast to provide that informal mentorship, those strategies, those inspirations to win. And I'm so lucky that in my career, in my creative journey, I've met so many incredible people who are so willing to dedicate their time to this podcast and their energy to share with you guys. So I highly, highly, highly recommend going back and checking out a few podcast episodes. We have interviewed a gamut of creatives across business, across dance, across film, across TV, across writing. And even if that's not something you're interested in, like say you're not interested in being a writer, I still highly suggest you check out the podcast by Maza Mengiste or Jasmine Darznik, who are New York Times bestselling authors, because they still share advice on how they found their creative passion, how they found their purpose, what avenues they took, and how they even left their full-time jobs to go and be full-time writers. And so it's always just a great story to hear and hear how other creatives did it. So highly encourage that. The second reason I started this podcast is, like I mentioned, I was on the radio and I loved being on the radio. It was such a great, awesome opportunity, another medium to share my voice and share my thoughts and my inspirations and my ideas. And then one day I was no longer on the radio. I lost my radio show. And actually, you might be thinking, well, I want to hear that story. And I've got a treat for you because the Islam channel actually did a short story on me leaving the radio station and they published it last week. So if you haven't seen it, it's a video. It's about 2 minutes long. You can check it out on my Instagram page, Funny Brown Girl, or you can go to the Islam channel's Instagram page, which is Islam Channel TV. And shout out to Ravat Anand for doing this amazing interview. We talked for like 30 or 40 minutes and he was able to do such a great job condensing it. But it is a video and it's an awesome story about why I left the radio. About 20 minutes in, I said, I'm Muslim. And 3 of them at the table stood up. One of them said, get rid of her. And they walked out. were getting started, a group of people came in. There was 12 of them. And they had reserved the table right in the front. So I thought they were like my biggest fans. I was like, oh, this is gonna be great. You know, they reserved the table. I'm gonna make them laugh so hard. And I went on stage, and it was right away, the energy was different, and I knew something was wrong. But I'd never been in that situation before to really understand what was happening. About 20 minutes in, I said, I'm Muslim. And 3 of them at the table stood up. One of them said, get rid of her, and they walked out. And that was the first time in my career that somebody had actually, I knew people get upset when I say I'm Muslim, but they usually just detach. They usually just sit back in their chair and cross their arms. I never actually had people walk out on me. And so they walked out, and then the rest of their party walked out, and they caused this huge disturbance in the middle of the show. And it was the first time I cried on stage. And it was so embarrassing because I'm supposed to make you laugh. I'm not supposed to like break down into tears on stage. And after the show, it got even worse. Like, they came and started yelling at me for ruining their night. That incident happened on a Saturday night. And then on Monday, I was supposed to go into the radio to do the show. And I got a call that says, you're not allowed to come back on the radio because the club owner has banned you from the club. And because the club owner has banned you from the club, we can't perform there anymore with you. So you really shouldn't be in our show anymore because you're hurting our image. They came back to me a couple days later and they said, okay, here's what we can do. You can apologize to the 12 people who were offended by you being Muslim and to the club owner and make things right. And then you can be back on the show. And I was like, no, that's just not going to happen. Like, I'm not apologizing to anybody. Why should I apologize for being Muslim? It's like asking me to apologize for being female. It's who I am. It's half of what I talk about on the radio. Like, you're just going to take that away from me? Able to have that happen to you and then walk away and do better in life and create more. And I've got a podcast now that does even better than the radio show does. I mean, I have more listeners around the world than the radio show. And so I can't complain, right? I can't say it's like Allah has my back. Allah knows what he's doing. And this is the journey he wanted me to go on. When I look at incidences like the radio happening and the comedy clubs happening and stuff like that, it hurts. I do get angry about it, but then I've got to realize, like, I have to look to Allah, to look to God and think, okay, what are you trying to do to my career? Like, what is the bigger picture here? Where are we going with this? And I know that he's not going to lead me astray. Like, I feel like if I live a good life and like I do things by the book, I'm ethical and I have values, he's there to protect me. And so I don't know what could have happened if I'd stayed on the radio, but I can assume that he wanted me to step away from that for some reason.
Can you guys imagine that video has only been up for a week and it has over 23,000 views? How exciting is that? So what I want you guys to do is to keep sharing that video. Let's make it go even more viral because I think it's such a great story and Islam Channel did such a great job putting it together. Watching that video actually reminded me about what an effect that night had on me. Like, I kind of put it in the back of my head and didn't really think about it, especially because it's 2020 and I haven't really been doing comedy. So it hasn't really been something that I've had to concern myself with. But it's interesting because it just takes one of those incidents to really scare you, right? Like, here I am about to do comedy, make you laugh, do something I'm passionate about, and it turns into this scary, scary event, right? And it doesn't just end that night. It continues, right? It keeps going. It spirals. And that's just, it's just scary that we live in this world where people can take their hate and their anger and bring it to a public place like a comedy show and then continue that dialogue on social media. And there's just no way sometimes to just explain to people, like, you're being ignorant. Like, why don't you just educate yourself? Because you can't teach people like that. And so that was really eye-opening as I watched this video because it just made me realize, like, that was a couple years ago, and now we're in the 2020 election here in the United States, and those same people are probably acting the same ignorant way, and there's no leader here in the United States to tell them otherwise. And that's why I really hope that the election, I don't want to make this political, but I really hope that the election changes leadership in the United States. And this podcast episode is coming out the day after the election here in the United States, so we may or may not have a winner. But I really, really hope that it's a change for good that comes out of this election. I've had a lot of you reach out to me since this video went live, saying congratulations and saying this was a great story and stay true to your path. I've had a couple people ask questions, and one of the questions that keeps coming up is, where did you find the courage to say you were going to walk away from the radio? And I think it came from two different places, right? My courage came from, one, knowing myself and respecting myself. And I think that's super important when you're a creative, because there's going to be a lot of people in your creative journey who are going to try to take advantage of you and try to take advantage of the fact that you want to become successful. And it's really knowing what is your self-worth and how much do you respect yourself. And I know that if I had apologized to those people, right, even if it wasn't even a genuine apology, and I just apologized so I could clear my name and stay on the radio and get unbanned, I would never be able to look myself in the mirror again, because those people would have won. And they have no right to win because they were ignorant to start with. And the fact that they even caused me to have this discussion with my radio co-host was just absurd. And so, one, I just couldn't apologize to those people. So that's where half my courage came from. The other half of my courage came from the fact that even if I had held my ground at the radio station and said, I am not apologizing to those people, but I have every right to be in this radio booth because I have worked my butt off to be here and my name is on the contract, and they agreed, I would not be able to go into that radio station every day and look at my co-hosts in the eyes, knowing that they didn't support me, knowing that we could be doing a show somewhere else and they will stand on the wayside and not say anything, knowing that I wouldn't feel safe going with them anywhere because I've seen what they believe in and I've seen their ideologies. And for me, those are not the people I want to surround myself with. You have to learn in your creative journey and just in life in general, like wherever you decide to work or wherever you decide to invest time in, you want to surround yourself with people who love you, with people who support you, with people who are going to have your back, because that's the only way you're going to find success, right? When you're hanging around with toxic people, those people are going to bring you down. And you might think, well, I'm stronger than that. They're not going to bring me down. Well, they will keep trying. The stronger you become, the more they're going to try to break you down. And I've tried to talk about this in other episodes, and some creatives have touched on this, is that you have to take yourself out of those situations. And that was actually one of the biggest learnings I learned from this, is that as exciting as it was to have my own radio show, as exciting as it was to say, I didn't even go to school to do radio and now I'm on the radio, I have to learn to just say no sometimes. I have to learn to walk away from opportunities that may not fit my bigger plan in life. And obviously God felt, and the universe too, felt that this was not going to fit the grander scheme in what he planned for my life. This was not going to help me get to the next level of wherever he plans to take me. And that's the other thing, is that the universe works in various ways. Like, and I don't understand how the universe works. I'm not saying I understand it, and I don't know how God works really, but I do believe in God, and it's okay if you don't believe in God. Again, no judgment, but I do believe that he has a path for me, and this radio show wasn't meant to be part of that path. And so this all had to happen because I had to get out of that situation. Did I learn anything from it? Yes, I learned, one, walk away from opportunities that aren't meant for you. But I also learned in the future how to handle a situation like this. I was given an ultimatum, right? Apologize or walk away. I walked away, and that's all that happened. I turned in my resignation. We signed off on the contracts that they were terminated. I turned in my badge, and that was it. And then the people at the radio, like leadership at the radio, cut all communication with me, because they felt that I was giving up on an opportunity that I should be blessed about, that I should feel more appreciative about, and that I wasn't excited about the opportunity that they had given me because I was throwing it back in their face. What I should have done was, when I left the radio station that day with my decision, I should have called those people and told them exactly what had happened and why I was walking away, instead of letting them hear it from other people, because they obviously heard the wrong story, and that hurt my reputation. And I've noticed that I do that a lot sometimes. I walk away from situations without telling my side of the story because I don't like drama. Two, I don't feel like I need to throw people under the bus for no reason. I mean, there was a reason here, but like, it just didn't feel necessary to continue the conversation once I had made my decision. But I have learned that in my creative journey, that instead of just walking away and letting people go with whatever they did, they're just going to go do that to someone else. So it's my job to speak up and say something about it, and I have to get better at that. I mentioned this before, like this leaving the radio, and I talked about it in the interview too, is that there's a bigger calling for me in life. And there's a quote that I actually found. And for those of you who've listened to this podcast from day one, you know I love memes or quotes from Instagram. Like, those are my favorite. And there's a quote on Instagram that says, if your path is difficult, it is because your purpose is bigger than you thought. And I love that, because it's so true. Like, we go through life and we think, why do we have to deal with these things, right? Like, why did I have to deal with this situation? Why did I have to be at this show at this time with these people? And I think it's because the universe is trying to strengthen me. This universe is trying to get me to a point where when success really comes, like, I'm not successful right now, but when I become successful, I'm going to have even more of these challenges and obstacles, but I'm now going to know how to deal with them better, because I've gone through all these other obstacles and difficulties getting to that path of being successful. And so it's really looking at everything with a positive and optimistic viewpoint, which I think is super important. So that brings me back to why I started this podcast. I started this podcast, the second reason was, after I left the radio, I really just wanted to have a voice, but I wanted to do something with purpose with my voice. And that was, I wanted to help other people. I wanted to share not only my experiences as a creative, but I wanted to share the experiences of other creatives. And I really hope that I am doing that with you guys right now. Whenever I interview a creative, I always end the interview with this question. I say, what advice do you have to creatives on their journey? So I'm going to answer that question, because I haven't actually ever answered that question directly. And I'm going to try not to get emotional, because, again, remember, I'm recording this on Election Day here in the United States, so Tuesday, November 3rd. We live in a really weird time right now. And I don't just mean here in the United States. I mean all over the world. Like, you look at the United States, you look at what's happening in France right now, you look at what's happening in Nigeria. Everyone is under attack, no matter where you live, right? No matter your gender, your sexuality, your race, your religion. We're a divided world. We're a divided nation right here in the United States. And this is not something that I've just started dealing with lately, right? This is something I've dealt with since I was a child. The hateful comments, the racial slurs, the death threats, people telling me, like, I'm not going to pay you today because it's an immigration tax. Like, that's just ridiculous. Or I had a guy one time threatened to kill me. He said, I'm going to take care of you. And not in a sugar daddy kind of way, but he really meant it. Like, I had to have security walk me to my car. And I interact with these ignorant people who say these things to me. And you know what hurts the most? It's not that their ignorance hurts me. It's that usually 99% of the time when someone says something to me like that, there's someone standing right next to me who considers them my friend. And they don't say anything. They just stand there in silence, pretending they're oblivious. And that's what really hurts the most. When this incident happened at this comedy show and these people started yelling at me, my co-host was there from the radio, a fellow comedian. And I asked him, I said, why didn't you stand up for me and say anything? Instead, you were taking pictures with them and laughing and having a jolly good time. And he said, it's not his place. It was not his place to say anything. And I have such a big problem with that. There is so much wrong with what's happening in the world right now. And if we all just stood up and said something when something wasn't right, maybe we wouldn't fix everything, but at least it would be a start, right? If you see something that doesn't sound right, or you hear something that doesn't sound right, say something. Stand up, especially if that person, you consider them a friend or a business partner. He said it wasn't his place to say something. As a human race, as a human being, I think it is our place to say something. Now, I understand, like, if we were in a contentious argument and they were violent and maybe we thought they had guns or knives, maybe then you would step back and say, okay, maybe now is not the right place to say something. But as human beings, I personally feel we need to start saying something more often than not, because I think things are getting out of control. And a lot of it is because we're staying silent. We're so afraid of what people are going to say or what people are going to do. Even on social media, somebody interviewed me a couple days ago from India, actually, and they wanted to know why I don't have any political jokes up on my Instagram or my Twitter or my Facebook. And I said to them, I don't want to rock the boat unnecessarily. Sometimes you just have to let things be. Sometimes you just I can't stir up drama because I need to take care of myself, and self-care is super important, especially right now. But as I was saying that, I was thinking, like, I also need to start saying something, right? I also need to start having a voice, which is why I joined TikTok, because TikTok I thought was a great platform to do that. So I have made a video or two that kind of shares my political viewpoints, but that's not enough. And I need to do better at that too. I definitely need to be better at speaking up and saying something and using this platform to do that more. And so I'm going to take that as a learning, but I really urge you all to be kind to each other in the coming days, especially here in the United States. Be kind to each other. If you see something happening that's wrong, speak out, say something, because that's the only way that we can learn to love each other again and to heal this world. And it's sad where we are as a society in this world. And I really think that learning about each other, educating ourselves, and then just being there for each other is going to be super, super important. Okay, so let's switch it up a little bit and get back into happy mode. I do have a lot of new listeners, and I know over the summer I said I was going to do Instagram lives, and so we could get to know each other and ask questions, and then I never did it because I just didn't. COVID happened, and things were hectic, and I was trying to survive, and what I am going to do is put a date on the calendar. So here's what we're going to do. This Sunday, November 8th, at 3 p.m. Eastern time, which is New York time, I'm going to go on Instagram Live. And I'm saying it on this podcast, so now I have to do it with chicken wings. Yes, so bring food, bring your chicken wings. I'm going to eat some chicken wings, and I will answer any questions you guys have about whatever. So if you want to talk about this episode, past episodes, you have questions for me, you want to talk about the Islam Channel interview, you want to talk about the election, we can do it. If you don't want to talk about the election too, that's fine. If you want to talk about what's happening in France, if you want to talk about Nigeria, Austria, I think it was Quebec the other day. Like we can talk world politics too. I studied international relations, so I love talking about this stuff. You can join me at 3 p.m. on Instagram. If you have questions and you don't want to share them on Instagram, feel free to send them to me in advance. You can hit me up on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, or TikTok at Funny Brown Girl, or you can email me at hi@funnybrown.com, and we will just have a party. And then in 2 weeks' time, I will continue the conversations that we were having from the last episode about side hustles and how to make money from your creative passion. So with that said, go flex your creative muscle and keep winning.